What's up, Bassgorilla crew? I'm here to let you know I'm doing another masterclass in a few weeks, building a drum and bass tune from the ground up, every sound, live in front of your eyes. So I'll be covering how to make kicks, how to make snares, how to make shuffles and percussions, how to mix a tune down, 3 different types of basses, risers, loads of effects, how to write an intro, build, and a drop, just everything. Sign up now to get a super early bird special as space is limited.
What's up, guys? So in this tutorial we're going to go through some mixdown techniques that I employ when trying to achieve modern level loudness. So by that I mean high RMSs and the kind of frequency shape that we see in modern tunes. So I've kind of thrown in a pretty rudimentary kind of drum and bass drop setup. As you can see, it's pretty simple. I've got a kick, snare, a bass line with just the mids, and then some hats and effects stuff. So the first thing to do, I guess, is to talk about the master chain and my setup in general. So mine has always been pretty simple, really. The only thing affecting the audio is this Pro L, and there's just one of those on my master, and that's it. So that allows me to keep everything pretty simple. The only other thing is an analyzer, and I use Voxengo's Span, which is a free plugin, which you've probably, if you've seen any of my other videos, you've seen me bang on it about it quite a lot. It's just, a bit of a game changer. When I found this, as opposed to using Logic or Cubase's inbuilt ones, it kind of changed the game for me a little bit. What's going on here? So, I'm just going to run through the settings on that. So, my Pro L, for the ultimate loudness, I use Punchy, which is usually used for individual tracks as opposed to the master, but when we're trying to achieve these really high RMS, really loud mixes, I find it allows for the loudest of the 4. So no look ahead, because that basically shifts all the audio by the amount that you define here. So let's say it's a millisecond, and allows the compressor therefore to know ahead of time what kind of peaks are gonna happen, so it can act before them to chop off anything going too high, which on paper sounds great, but it chops off a lot of the coolness of our transients with this aggressive kind of music. So I'll leave it at nothing. You'll get distortion and stuff, but they'll only happen for tiny amounts of time. So I'd leave that off. Attack all the way up and release as quick as possible. These are the settings I've found achieve the loudest masters. Okay, so let's have a quick look at this tune, and we're going to look at it in Voxengo Span. I've just chopped it to the drop so we can kind of get straight into it. Okay, so there's a few things we want to look at there. Before we dive in, I'm going to go show you my settings. So if you get Voxengo Span, it won't look like this straight away. It will look something more like this, which is a bit confusing for me. So first time I loaded it up, I was like, well, I wasn't particularly impressed by it. But with a bit of tweaking, it quickly becomes the best around, in my opinion. So I have average time on as quick as possible. So all the harmonics or the partials that are being shown react as quickly as possible and kind of dive back down to 0 as soon as they're not really there. I have it on a very high resolution. 4000 allows for a little more speed, but 8 you can really start to see each individual harmonic. Which is just so useful, to be honest. And by default, it comes with a slope on of 4.5. I take that off. The slope kind of confuses me. If you had plotted a sine wave, in fact, I'll show you now what I mean by that. So let's just get a single harmonic moving up in pitch. It should be displayed, I think, as the same loudness all the way up. With slope on, it kind of does this weird thing where it goes upwards. So let's just quickly put a macro on the pitch, and then automate that. Oh, I didn't put the slope on. You can see it getting higher there, which is confusing for me. So I take that off. Okay, anyway. Yeah, so this is my settings. So I analyze tunes that I like, and have a look at what the shape is saying, and then try and replicate that. So if we want to get a better look for the overall average kind of shape, we're going to bring the average time up. So you can see you kind of get like a saw wavy slope down to about 600, and it flattens off to about 10 and then rolls off again. Which is kind of the modern shape that we're looking at. So to get like a good average look at what a tune's frequency spectrum looks like, turn the average time up, I would. But yeah, I've got used to, at first the average time up at 50 will look quite weird. But it really tells you what's happening moment to moment, which is important. So, yeah, let's have a little look at what the different elements are leveling at. So we've got a very full mid-range bass, and then a very pronounced and loud sine wave at the bottom, which generally modern mixes kind of float around -3 to 0. So we put it on 4, it might look like it's at 0. Perhaps not. Anyway, and the RMS is about -5. Unfortunately, with span, to get an accurate RMS, you kind of have to bypass it and unbypass it. A more accurate RMS reading is usually given by Pro L. So I have a screen to my right that I'm not obviously recording with Pro L and span up at all times, so I can constantly see what's going on there. You can see that's about -5. Cool. So, what have I got? I've got a kick and snare, a bass line just in mids and hats and effects. Apparently that's not playing. Okay, so it's not being sent out. Either of the hats. Okay, let's get these going. So I'm going to presume if you're doing this lesson that you've kind of got your drums and bass line and everything to the way you want it, and you're kind of wanting that extra sparkle on your mixes. So yeah, I'm going to presume that you know how to get your kicks and snares sitting in the right regions. Let's just presume they are. So just without any EQing or anything on the master, let's try and get all that to the shape that we're seeing on here. Let's just low pass it for now. So I'm just going to put an EQ on the master. So we can just concentrate on this top end. So as you can see, we've kind of got our hats and stuff already, without EQing the master or anything, just the loudness of these elements in the mix. So I'm just going to turn off a little bit. So this is our hat. Kind of got to like -33. It might be a little too loud, maybe. Yeah, a little bit. Could put it back down, so that's fine. Okay, so this mid bass line doesn't have any low end in it, and I thought I'd leave that out so I can recreate it with you guys from the ground up, because the relationship and the consistency between, well, the relationship between the kick and the bass low end, this region, is extremely important for loud and clear mixes nowadays. So I'm going to recreate the low end of this bass and have it move around the low end of the kick, so you can see how that relationship works. Yeah, another thing to note, I found out in the last year or so I was doing some experiments and I found that the RMS is pretty much determined by the last 200 hertz generally in these modern mixes. Yeah, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm gonna just low pass this this mix here. And we'll see what the RMS is still. So it's nearly about -6, bearing in mind the whole mix was about -5. And we're getting rid of, well, 160 hertz, all the way up to 20,000. So all that region here, all this, is only giving us 1 RMS. No, that's not true. Sorry. So this, yeah, the RMS of this bit is something like -40. Okay, -12 maybe. Let's move it up a little bit. So let's say 260 hertz. So just 260 downwards is going to give us, which led me to the conclusion that the RMS is pretty much determined by the low end of the tune. So that kind of made me think, all right, well, I need to be really precious and cautious about how I treat the last 260 hertz of my tune. So with that in mind, I'm going to recreate the low end to this bass line, and treat it and route it all so that it all fits in nicely. So yeah, first thing to do is work out what notes are being played here. So every time it changes note, we're going to put it on a new channel just to simplify things. So now that actually has a good amount, because the notes being played are an octave up. It actually has some more of that. Its lowest harmonic, its fundamental, is actually still in there. So actually we don't need to treat that too much. We're going to focus in on this guy. Okay, so I'm going to recreate its low end. So I like using just individual sine waves and treating them. So I'm going to get a sine wave and massive. You can use any synth really. I imagine the majority of soft synths create sine waves. So we're going to find an F sharp, which is that. Now clearly that's too high, so let's look at that where that is. So we're looking for the fundamental, which is probably sitting around here. So I'm going to bring that down a couple octaves. Let's see what it says. That's more like it. Alright. Now it looks like we're missing some information there. It's a big gap. Also, the start of the note seems to have this kind of pitch down thing going on. I probably bounced a sound out, put it in contact, and put a pitch envelope on it, much like this. Also, it's playing 2 notes. We've only got 1 here, so let's do that. Do. You can start to hear that the sine wave pitch is kind of matching the mid. But I think it's coming down from too high up and too quickly, so I want to have it maybe 24 and a bit slow. Cool. So we are missing that some of that mid-range information. So instead of a sine, we could, what I normally might do if I was being really precious, is create another one. In fact, we'll do that. So the next one should be an octave up. But that sounds a bit loud to me, so I'm going to bring it down. So now we've got a really solid kind of low end. So in a saw wave you have the fundamental, which is by itself, and then the next one up is an octave, and then the next one up after that would be a fifth and an octave. So let's bring it up by 7 semitones, which is a fifth. Oh, it's an 8. So let's listen to that. There you go. That's kind of a saw wavy kind of thing going on there, but we don't need the fifth because we already actually have it in this this mid range. So okay, so the tops and mids are in the right regions. This whole low end needs to be louder. So let's bring these two up. Basically, I'm gonna go into here, link them. How do you do that? There you go, and turn them up. So we said that we want our sub about 0, so I'm going to bring the whole thing up. Let's link them together. In fact, we can just group them at this point. So I've sent these basically now to a group, and this effects chain will now affect all of them. So let's play it again. Let's do some EQing. In fact, let's get some tape saturation on there for some loudness. Okay, let's go. So now we've got that, much like our entire mix, we've got this kind of slope, saw waving down to about 6. And then flat with a bit more emphasis, I guess, on this region for some loudness. And then ducking a bit for our hand. That's a fairly good shape, so we're going to leave that alone now. And listen to what it sounds like with the whole bass line. And listen to the whole tune now. So the shape looks alright. Obviously, real mixes take more than half an hour to do. This is a very rushed version, but that's something like I want it to be. So I'm going to bounce the whole bass line out now. Bass line in full. Alright, so we can now create another folder and just hide all that business. Just mute it all and whack it away. Mess. So usually when I'm making tunes and you start to have too many channels going on, I have a mess kind of folder that I can go back in if I need any elements, but you can kind of just leave it be. Let's put this, it's not doing anything. Okay, so I'm going to whack in our bass line again now. And have a look at it. Okay, so got a nice squashed sausage. With a good solid low end on those first two notes. The good thing about using sound waves and stuff, if you've chorused and phased your bass line quite a lot, this low end becomes really consistent and a bit floppy. Reinserting sine waves makes sure that they're really solid. Okay, so we're going to create two versions of this now. So we want to look at what's going on the low end of the tune. So let's so the elements down there, the low end of the kick and the low end of the bass line, right? So we want to have full control over those two elements. So we're going to split the kick into two versions of itself. So I'm going to have everything below 150 and everything above. So I'm going to create a copy of that now. And there we go. Okay, so I'm going to bounce these out now. I like bouncing out stuff so I can have a look at, well, what the waveform is like. It helps you to know when to fade stuff and have ultimate control over stuff. I should say stuff less. I have to find a better word for that. Okay, so let's get rid of our originals and have a look. So this is kick tops. This is kick bottoms. Okay, so generally I color things depending on what frequency content they have. Low end stuff I put in yellow generally. And let's have a little look at what the kick is saying by itself. So interesting that the transient is straight away, obviously. It's the first element of the tune, of the sound, sorry. But then the low end actually comes in quite a long time after the transient. So if you were fading the low end of your bass line on the kick, if you had it normally, the loudest part is the start, so you'd probably fade for then. But that's actually just the top end, and so you're still going to be creating distortions you don't want if you're not fading at the correct times. So bouncing out allows me to see that. We'll do the same to the bass line as well. So we're going to create a version that's above 150 and one below. So let's have a little play here, create another version of it, and do the opposite. Okay, so now I'm going to bounce that out. Alright. So let's have a look at this. Looks like the low end. Okay, so that's going to be in yellow again. And the bass line is mid-range, so that's going to be red. Let's colour that as well. Alright, so now I look at the things that are conflicting the low end. So we don't want two yellows happening at the same time, basically. So there's a few ways to do this. People use compressors and sidechaining, which is a cool way of doing stuff. I like to be a little more anal about it and kind of draw in envelopes. So I'm gonna do that basically. So this kick low end is conflicting with our bass line for this amount of time. So generally kicks want to take precedence over bass line because the bass line sub is going to be there the whole time pretty much. The kicks only happen for short amounts of time, so we're going to duck the bass line around the kick. Okay, so we're going to create 2 points, either at 0, and then have it duck around the kick. So we're going to bring that down. You can totally use side chains, there's nothing wrong with that. I just like this method, it gives me more peace of mind, but I'm not sure if it really does any a better job or not, but it's up to you, isn't it, really? So I'm going to copy and paste that shape that I've created for each of the kicks. So let's listen to both of them together now. Oops. And it's twice. So you can hear the kicks coming through absolutely fine now. So if we just loop this bit, ignore the click, that's just the part of the loop. So if I took this off, we've got that distortion at the start, which is nasty sounding. And without it, and with it, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so we've got the loan of our tune is now consistent because we've drawn in some sine waves that we can trust, and we've moved the bass line around the kick. So let's listen to it. Okay, so that's some simple stuff. Now let's do some rooting. So yeah, we've got the low end pretty consistent, but the kick and snare transients want to take the forefront of the tune. So I send everything apart from those two things, the kick and snare transients, the kick and snare in general, to a bus that I can then sidechain. So let's do just that. Create a group called sidechain group. So this is going to have a Pro C on it, which is a native, a Fab Filter plugin. It's just a compressor really. So we're going to have it on the quickest settings possible. So a hard knee. We're going on to expert. And so usually the internal sidechain just means it's going to be triggered by the audio coming into it. And then the threshold determines when the compressor starts. Instead of that, we're going to have external. So we're going to send some information to it that tells it when to work, basically. So I've got something specifically set up for that. Instead of using the kick and snare, I've got a sidechain trigger that I bounced out called sidechain transient. So basically this is just a really short piece of audio that allows my compressor to act really quickly. So if you were using the snare, for instance, that whole shape would be taken into account. So the compressor would start here and it would end, depending on the threshold, somewhere over here. But I don't want that. I want it to happen for a really short amount of time. So we just kind of want to be sidechaining for this transient bit, the loudest part of the drum, this bit here. Okay, so in order to do that, I've created a really short transient, which sounds like this. But we're never actually going to hear it in the tune, so it doesn't really matter what it sounds like. It's just a cue, really. So I'm going to match the drum rhythm with this transient. So the drum rhythm goes like this. So the transient rhythm goes like this. Okay. And again, I said we're not going to be hearing that. So I've turned the sidechain enable on Pro C. And instead of going to the output, it's going to go to that sidechain there. So now this is telling this when to duck. So let's get everything sent to the sidechain group. So all this business wants to go there. So if I quick link and then sidechain group. Okay, so well, that didn't work. Quick link. There you go. Okay, so now this group should have all the audio apart from the kick and snare, which I'd say it does. Let's turn on the sidechain group, sidechain trigger. As you can see now, the trigger is ducking. Cool. So we've got it on the quickest settings possible, so it's just reacting just around that. Let's bring the kick and snare back in. Of course, it's a bit distorted. If you leave auto on, it's going to boost the gain after the compressor, which is why it was distorting so badly. So we'll take that off. Actually, not going to send the kick bottoms to the sidechain group. We're going to have that coming straight out. So now you can hear the kick and snare transients popping through really nicely. I think the bass line's got a little too much up in here. Let's just bring the kicks together again. So let's look at the shapes we've got in the different tunes here. I'm not going to pretend this sounds as good as that, because it simply doesn't. We've only been working on it for 20 minutes or so. Let's have some more bass in that last bit, shall we? And let's pitch that up. Doo-doo. Looking for that note. So let's go. Doo-doo. Just going to fade this around this kick here. Simple way of doing that would be just fade and fade. In fact, that mid, we haven't got enough low end in this section here, so I'm going to create a new track, sorry, and And again, we need to do that fade there. Just going to bring that down in volume. Still need some more. Maybe we need to. Yeah. Let's get some more sine waves in there. Let's recreate the low end of that. I think I might have low cut it a little too drastically. So let's get some sine waves up. I believe that's the wrong octave, so I'm going to bring it down 2 again. Okay, let's just do a quick pitch envelope on it. That's more like it, and then get a quick low pass on there to get rid of the clicks. And then we're going to do the same thing as we did for the sub before. Just bounce it out and duck it for the time that the kicks exist. So put it in yellow again. So we've got a kick there and there. So it's going to draw in some automations. In fact, we could probably use the ones we have near. So, oops. Let's copy that and whack it in here. Oops. There you go. And there. And actually it wants to be there, doesn't it? Get rid of this stuff. Oh well. There's actually no information there anyway, so. Make it go up a little bit. Make sure it's going to the sidechain group. A good way of checking that everything's going there is just turning the volume of that down. Hopefully you should just hear your kick and snare. Feel like the hats could be a little bit louder maybe. See what RMS we're reaching there then. So I'm going to get my master chain up again. If you're in Cubase, if you want your master bus to be on the right there all the time, just click that. So the rightmost zone is always going to be, no matter where I scroll on here, it's still my stereo out, which is useful. Of course, we need to change the side chain trigger there. We've got an extra kick. And they have it, kind of quick tips on how to get louder mixes. And one last thing we could do is group all the low end content together, send it to a bus that is then sent to the sidechain group, of course, and then so this should just be low end if we listen to it. So this is kind of a roundabout way of doing some low end multiband compression. So if we leave the look ahead on and kind of push it a little bit, and make sure we've got some low passing going on there. And that should drive our RMS up even higher. But apparently it hasn't. That's interesting. Let's push it even more. yeah, nearly reaching 4. Obviously, that's quite an aggressive way of doing it. So I'd probably leave that out for this tune, but that's one thing you can do. Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of a few ways about how I go about routing my tunes to get that maximum loudness. Cool, I hope you picked up some useful stuff there. I'll see you in the next one. See you guys.